What is up, guys? Basically, I've just been doing a lot of statistical research and stuff like that, trying to put some things together to help everybody possibly locate a Sasquatch or shrink down some areas that they can search. So I kind of came up with, an AKA report here. So the first thing we're looking at is the Analytical Data Point Convergence. It's based on Sasquatch reports. And to me, obviously, there's the top four reasons in sightings or locations they hang out. First being food and water. As you look at the chart here, you have January to December. Basically, you have spring green up sometime in April, May through the summer. And what happens is a lot of times the reports start to spike through these months, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, and then by November, December, January, February, it seems like those months totally taper off as far as sightings go. Usually, once in a while, a foot trackway will be found in the snow somewhere, but they're more rare. It seems like they might be moving for food or water. So we have a reason to here, safety during travels or stationary. Again, here's your months. The foliage tends to be thicker, in given areas. April, May, June, July, August, September, when most of the sightings are reported. The ones that are reported in the winter, obviously, it's a lower abundance of sightings, but it would vary based on your region. So we all know that there's, suspected travel routes have been reported for Sasquatch, and this is just another cog in the whole wheel that we're going to be showing you. Reason 3, sexual breeding, sexual behavior. I really want to try to compare this to humans or bonobos, but it's not as easy. And one of the reasons I say that is because bonobos, although we try to compare them to Sasquatch, may totally be different on a sexual aspect here, as you can see in the Scientific American. So, like with the bonobos, it turns out here that sex turned out to be a big thing for social life with bonobos. Now, I don't know if we can compare that to Sasquatch or not. We also have another feature here that sex is connected to feeding. There's a few journals that state this. So with that, most reports that people hear, screaming or finding possible afterbirth, not even knowing, what it's from, or as far as a life cycle goes, as far as nature goes, if you look at the charts, most animals, deer, etc., that live in nature, have their offspring in the spring months, or February, March, April, May, up into June, and that is just based on like your natural selection and the way nature's designed. Because if you were having babies in the harsh conditions, it's hard to take care of babies or feed them, or it's not like humans where you can have kids year round. Even bonobos themselves, there was a thing written that until age 9, females won't reproduce. Now, I believe you could overlay that with Sasquatch in certain terms. And why do I say that? Because if Sasquatch was continually mating and having offspring year after year like a deer would, the numbers would be outrageous. So is it possible that they follow something like a bonobo where a female, doesn't have offspring till it's 9 years of age? That's possible. Reason 4 here, weather and sightings based upon statistics. Historically, sightings seem to take place around same times in certain locations based upon witnesses. So what I mean by that is in a given area where sightings continue to happen, there's a reason for it. Actually, quite a few reasons. These are some of the top 4 that I've written. Now, weather. A lot of your sightings seem to take place, again, April, May, June, July, September, August, etc. The harsh winter months is when it tapers off the most. Or if you're in an area where you don't get any summer activity and all your activity is during the winter, obviously your chart would be flip-flopped. So my conclusion here, in respect to looking at the data collected from various states, if we correlate these 4 data set points, one should be able to cross-reference the data with sighting locations. Now, you should be able to take a specific cluster of sightings in any given area and correlate this data that's graphed above, depending on your region. What our goal is to shrink or drastically, shrink the area you have to search to locate the species. So here we just have a report infographic based on BFRO reports, using our 4 data criteria. The problem is the top 3 seem to fall, in many of the sightings. The 4th is the hardest one to correlate, just based on birthing and situations that a lot of people don't know about. But if you look here, the largest number of reports, the state, the sightings. So we have Washington State. The largest number of reports in the county is Pierce County, Washington, with 693 reports. Based on a lot of the reports from the BFRO, food, water, safety corridors, travel pathways, and weather all play determining factors when either seeing or locating a Sasquatch. So again, if you apply all those data points, those 4 data points in a given location, you're going to shrink that location down, let's say, from 10,000 acres maybe to 5,000 acres. And then we have other things that you can implement. And here is just a graph from above with listed sightings. We just laid it out to see a little better. And again, seasons play a big role in putting your data together. So now if we correlate a lot of those sightings listed above, based upon the reported sightings, these counties listed with the highest sightings seem to have an abundance of food, water, including forested area. And the way I'm looking at it is, using the set data criteria and applying it to specific regions will ultimately show an increase in sightings. So if one applies the top 4 criteria that we've come up with here, plus the past sightings in the highest sighting counties in that region, the outcome over time will yield more sightings. So using New York as an example, I've learned that in a specific region, Chautauqua County, Western New York, the sightings reports, the possible vocalizations, all climb from April, peaking toward late summer, and with a hard taper toward October. Now, that may be, they may be traveling, going to larger woods. Hunters start hitting our areas. They disappear. They go down to Pennsylvania, Ohio, larger tracts of mountainous terrain, etc., or river valleys, that is. And then what I also came up with is taking that a step further. So we've taken a specific area and applied the past sightings and the top 4 criteria that we're looking for. And then we add in travel corridors from possible locations, basically from A to B, where we think they're going to be going and why we think they're going to be going to a certain area. Then what we look for is a sighting or a vocalization, something to tell us that they're in that area so we can proceed to the next step. Sometimes that's when the travel corridors or safety areas become a key. And usually we focus on travel corridors when we believe they're leaving our area in October. Or if the cooler temperatures come in, or if there's food or stress, that's when we implement the corridor strategy. And now we're getting to the versus method here. So basically, this is important to us. So what we try to do is use the carbon footprint of a Sasquatch to locate the species itself. So basically, we're using its carbon footprint against it. Again, this method is only used once all the previous data methods have been met, and it's brought you to this point. So you've found a region where there's tons of sightings. You've narrowed that down based on a closer frequency of sightings. Then you've found food, data, water, or food, shelter, water, things of that nature from our data sets and applied it to that area, which has, again, shrunk that area down even smaller. And then what we're going to do is get into that area, let's say you shrunk the area from 10,000 acres, now you're down to 2,000 acres, so you're gonna hit the ground running. And what this consists of is finding a main structure that is being currently used at that time, multiple game cameras with no exit, and certain gifting techniques that multiple people say they have luck with. Then you apply these three things, and I'll go over that. So again, the goal is to use the carbon footprint of Sasquatch against the species itself. Sasquatches leave foot impressions, hair, possible structures, even eDNA informs. That's something we really want to get into, that type of testing. But basically, if it eats, it breathes, the species leaves a carbon footprint. Even scat. So what we do is we'll search a given area for a main structure that was possibly built via the species. Once the structure is located, we have to deem that it's essential at that time that they're using it. And the way we do that is frequenting it multiple times, photoing it, writing things down, and comparing it day to day. We may do that from 5 to 10 to 15 days. We also look for foot tracks coming in, or foot impressions coming in from a certain location to this said structure. If we're finding that there's impressions coming in that are newer, more relative, that's when we deem it, hey, they're using this at this time for some reason. Okay, so once we determine that structure, like I said, is important, being used, we move on to the next step, which is some sort of gifting. This gifting may take place from 10 to 30 days. What you're trying to do is gain some trust. Now, in the region of this important structure, there should be some type of terrain change difference higher up. And what we say is try to go anywhere from maybe 30 to 150 yards away from that structure, up on a higher point. And what that does is it forces them to actually pass by your gifting site on their way to that given structure for whatever purpose. So what we'll do is we will put out our gifts, whatever it may be, whatever you have luck with in your area. And usually what will happen is it'll take a little while, and then all of a sudden you'll get a drastic amount of activity in a 7 to maybe 12-day window, usually 15-day maximum, where you may be exchanging things, taking things, or if it's food, they may be taking it and it's them, or foot tracks or impressions, whatever it may be. But you'll have a high volume all of a sudden of activity once they've grown accustomed to it being there. That is when you will set up your camera deployment system, and I'll go over that right now. So unlike deer, you'll set one here, one there, on travel pathways or whatever it is. You may have 200 acres and 10 cameras, and they're all over the place. You can do that to look for Sasquatch or crazy activity or certain activity, or your camera's being messed with. That's okay doing it that way once in a while, maybe to try to locate them, and then you can move everything into one area. But this is a little different. Once you've gotten this far, and you've found the sighting areas, you shrunk it down, you found the 4 data areas, you shrunk it down even more to where you're going to search. Then you found the structure, which shrinks the area more, and then you found the current activity, which shrinks it more. That's when you deploy your cameras. So what we do is get 10 to 12 cameras. We get them deployed in a horseshoe method. That's what we call it. And one of the best things that we realized is if you set up the cameras near daybreak, 7 a.m. to maybe 9 a.m., somewhere in that time frame, a lot of the animals, besides birds, but most animals are back in their beds. You're not going to run into any Bigfoot, hopefully. But that's the whole goal, so you're not seen doing this. You're just in, you're out, and daybreak seems to be a key time to do it. I will go over the horseshoe method here and show you the diagram. So the cameras will focus on the structure itself and the surrounding areas, including the gifting area. Installation of the game cameras will be in a horseshoe pattern surrounding the structure and the gifting area. The gifting area should be located on a slight ridge above the current structure being used. This may be 30 yards to no more than 150 yards of the said structure. I basically stated that a little while ago. What we like to do is place the first camera 20 yards to the left and 30 yards to the right of the structure. Those cameras would be a little higher. I'll explain that later. What our goal is to let them continually use their safety route. That same route. So if the structure's on the south end and they continue to come in from the north end, that's their safety route. They're going to use it. They don't sway or they don't change their route. It's worked for them for this long, and they're going to keep that. So the next cog in the horseshoe here is make sure you follow the diagram and just put it in your area that way. That's what worked for us. That's how we got photos, and I'm passing this all on to you. And you know that's the whole goal here is to get evidence. And you know a lot of people say, hey, you know, how do you do it? So I'm getting it out there, and hopefully people can implement this into their research or into, you know, their property. And if it works for you, let me know. Get back to me. We'll email, we'll correspond, and I appreciate it. So what you're going to do here, obviously, this is a structure. So here's your little map, if you want to call it that. Your key. It's just crude, but I've drawn it out for you. So basically here you have your structure, and then you have your two deployment cameras 20 to 30 yards on either side of it. Those two cameras will be at 8 feet or higher, 10 feet if you can get up that high. The rest on this side over here will be at your standard 5-foot height. You know, deer camera, bear, whatever, you're putting at right about a 5-foot height to catch everything. Why do we do that? Well, this is direction that the Sasquatch were continually entering from the northeast. And what we wanted them to do is see these 4 or 5 cameras over here. We wanted them. That was blatant. Those were there for a reason. And what happened is what we wanted to happen, actually. Maybe we got lucky, but when they come in, they will see these. They will see these cameras, and what happens is they'll tend to skirt 20 to 50 yards, just over a little bit, just off their main trail that they were continuing coming in. So these cameras could not get a photo. These 3 cameras, actually these 5 cameras here, these 3 cameras will be set at around 2 feet off the ground. 2 feet, which is very low. But we believe that they crawl or knuckle walk way more than they are on 2 feet. And that's just from our experience and talking with some other researchers. You know, maybe if they got to cover long distances, they're getting up on 2s and taking off and getting there. But most of the time, while they're eating, sitting, you know, moving within a couple 100 yards, I believe they're more on their hands and you know, feet. So these 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 will be set at about the 2-foot height. These 2 are about 15 to 20 yards off of your gifting site. Now remember, these are all set up in the same day. Boom, you know, 7 to 9 o'clock. You got like a 2-hour window. Get them in, get it out, get it done, get them set up. Once you have that consistent activity coming in, boom, 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 they're coming in. You're trading gifts. You're doing whatever it is. Then you get this all set up in one day. So what happens is they come in, they see these cameras, and their natural, using, like I said, using their carbon footprint against them, using their own techniques, they're going to skirt. They're going to skirt to the side, and that's exactly what happened to us when we received one of our photos. They skirted around, they missed this camera, and came in this direction, and this camera caught, you know, the photo, which I'll show you here. So this is the original photo here. As you can see, looks like a small juvenile head, the hair, possible forehead. This looks like a brow ridge, the heavy brow like they talk about, which has been reported thousands of times. Sort of like a cheek, almost looks like a chimp from the side here, like you'd be looking at a side view as it passed in front of the camera quickly. It was looking down toward the structure, which is down here, and the gifting area down there. It just happened to swing out and around, and you know, we got lucky to get a photo. This is the obvious photo, cropped a little bit and black and white. Uh, Change the color up just so you can see. It looks like a possible scalp with the hair that rises up. You can actually see, a little bit more detail in it. But yeah, that's why we're sharing this method. And like I said, so that's the main goal. You have to try to be as quiet as possible. Get it set up. Take a picture of this. Save it. If it works for you, I'd love to hear it. But make sure you have all the other set data points, taken care of. Find the area where the sightings are, and then shrink that down to the 4 data criteria at the beginning. Shrink that down, and it's a process. It's a applied process over and over. And you see how long it's taken us to get to here. Um, you know, and next we have basically a diagram that I came up with. This is reflecting a life of any animal or any human almost, but Sasquatch in general. You have, birthing and death, obviously, things that they need to survive: food, water, their sexual mainframe, things that affect them like humans and terrain and their genetics, sensory pollution, things that are going to push them to certain areas, possible sickness. I mean, we'd have to be dumb to think that they don't get sick. Everything on this planet seems to get sick and die. So um, you know other Sasquatch may affect them. Obviously, climate changes, different regions, different food abundance at certain times, safety corridors, I call them, where they're able to travel and move, undetected. Their adaptability, which seems to be great, but that's only because they're able to get from point A to point B unscathed or not seen. And every animal obviously needs its space. When any of these get thrown off, or there's a problem, anywhere down the line, things change. So you have to take all this into consideration when you're really trying to put together some type of plan to find a Sasquatch. And here we basically come upon natural selection, natural design. It applies to everything. So you have everything from the birthing cycle, coming down through, the learning processes. It's a phase where, all animals, people, what they learn is crucial. It's basically their building blocks. Everything they're taught. If a house has a bad foundation, I say it's not going to last long. So you have life's learning process there, and then it breaks down, goes into the how-to phase. And this phase is a multitude of skills, people, animals, Sasquatch are learning, where to live, how to eat, what to eat. We have to learn how to make food, etc. The whole 9 yards. So the how-to phase is very important for any species. Then we all get into the grown adult phase. It's just a cycle here. Basically, at this stage, we've adapted, we've overcame many instances. Adults may get upset, for simpler things like, hey, I'm trying to teach you and you're not learning the right way, or I'm not teaching you like you would, teach your kid, etc. And if we apply that to Sasquatch, it's definitely probable. As to where the last 2 phases, juveniles throw temper tantrums like babies. They don't have the food or the milk or etc. The adults are definitely different. Then you come around and it's just a complete life cycle, full circle. So everything that the elders taught and the young ones relied upon, now it's come full circle, and it's basically their turn to take care of the elder. And now basically we're going to break it down for your terrain focus. Obviously your top 5 are mountainous areas, deep valleys, rolling hills, waterways, and swamps. I'll go a little bit farther and I'll say that if you can focus on certain areas and corridors, what do I mean by corridors? So I will grab an example. So this is what I would call like a broad-based corridor. So when you look at this corner of New York State down into PA, into Ohio, etc., that direction, you have a big lake right here, and it basically divides the state in this corner. So with this, large lake that you have here, if any Sasquatch is coming across the state here, or whatever it may be, in this direction toward PA or Ohio, it has two options. It either goes between the tip of this lake and the tip of Lake Erie. And this area here, it's heavily, I can't say it's heavily forested. There's a lot of farmland, a lot of great production down through here. I don't think it moves as much down through here as it would up through here where the heavy terrain is, as you can see down in the PA. So it's almost forced into this direction. You see what I'm saying? And that's how we ended up finding our area in here. It's where they were forced to come down through. So that's a broad base. So I'll start with that. That's a broad base land feature that forces them, into this direction. Now, if you zoom in, you can get your close-knit corridors. So for an example, large tract of land here, all through here, it's got to cross a road. It's going to usually cross from timber to timber. It rarely crosses timber to opening up through here. Why would it? Unless it's nighttime. Is it plausible? Yeah, it's surely plausible. But I like to follow fingers. This is what you call a finger, where you have a large tract of land, then it fingers out, and there's all these fields around it, because a lot of times they'll follow that finger just to stay down in that drainage, just to stay down in there. And then a lot of times I've even seen, which is crazy, instead of them crossing the road, let's say this was open over here, where they'd come down, follow this section into another section to be able to cross. Just because this was open field. It's almost like they took the long way around. But those are the corridors that you need to look for. So if the Sasquatch are here and you think they're leaving your area because it's the time of the year that they're going to be leaving. So yeah, those are the key points to look for, where they're going to cross highways. If they're leaving your area in October, let's say, and they need to make it to Pennsylvania where the mountains are, or Missouri to whatever state, or whatever it may be, take your area in general and look at the pinwheels, I call them, the areas where they can move unobstructed, stay hidden, and get from point A to point B. And if you can do that and figure out, hey, every year, July I have, activity, come August I don't. Well, in August that they're most likely leaving this area here. And if you search this whole area, that they're going to be leaving here or wherever. Set up ahead of time. That's your algorithm that people talk about, that I talked about years and years ago. But now I'm just explaining it to you. So then you can set up here, be there for a week or whatever it may be. Set up your cameras, get ahead of it. So then you can catch your photos or whatever, because it always seems we're behind them. We're too far behind them. Again, I appreciate, you guys sticking through this and learning from me, and I'm only learning from them, basically, so I'm teaching it, passing it on to everybody. I hope you liked it. Like I said, if you use this in your strategies and it works, leave a message, get a hold of me somehow, so we could talk about it. I'm trying to see how many people it will work for.